Hello, today's Resurrection Doctrine Controversy video. I will begin by reading one scripture verse, and then I will explain where this fits into the series. And he, Jesus, said to him, "Why do you ask me about what is good? There is only one who is good. If you would enter life, keep the commandments." That is Matthew 19:17. You may wonder what this video is doing in a series on the resurrection, on the doctrine of the resurrection and controversies about that, the resurrection of the dead. Well, I'm hardly going to mention, in fact, the resurrection of the dead in this video, but instead I'm going to mention another doctrinal controversy in Christianity, namely the divinity of Christ. And I think, as you will see in later videos, this will shed some light on this controversy about full preterism and the resurrection of the dead. Historically, and even today, there are those who deny the divinity of Jesus Christ, deny that Jesus is God, and they claim to have scripture proof of it. Some of their favorite texts, I've already read one of them from Matthew, others of them now. I'm not going to read the rest of them aloud on this video, but look them up. John 14:28, where Jesus says, "The Father is greater than I." Well, God is greater than any other. Therefore, it seems like a pretty obvious argument that Jesus is disclaiming divinity in that verse. Matthew 24:36, the Son of Man is ignorant about a certain point. I'm not taking that in the context of Matthew 24, which we can and will discuss on the eschatology, but just on the Christology. God knows everything. The Son of Man doesn't know something. Therefore, the argument would appear to be obvious that Jesus isn't God from any of these verses or all of them together. Now, what do they do with this, though? Very logically, based on their reading of certain verses, these people, these groups, interpret other verses to form a system of doctrine. And in fact, they do and must read very many verses of the Bible according to their reading of one. For example, Acts 20:28, which speaks of the church of God, which he purchased with his own blood. John 20:28, in which Thomas says to the risen Christ, "My Lord and my God." Well, now, see, they think in error that their whole system of doctrine, which I can summarize in how they read certain texts on the Christology and how they develop the entire rest of Scripture accordingly, they think in error that only their religion pleases God. And the second part of point 3 I'll come back to after reviewing what I got to say as Orthodox Presbyterian against the Arian. Well, first, in contrast to their point 1, I say that it is obvious that the Arian reading of these verses is not the only possible interpretation, in fact. And you know what? I actually use their own theological reasoning, their own logic against them, since from their reading of verses under their point 1, they very logically arrive at a whole huge system of doctrine that is unscriptural at interpreting very many other verses. Due to their error under their point 1, they get Acts 20:28 on the doctrine of the atonement wrong. They get John 20:28 wrong on the doctrine of the nature of saving faith in Jesus Christ, and many other points. It's really neat to use their own logic against them. And in fact, that actually says something about those favorite proof texts of theirs. The Arian interpretation of their proof texts actually turns out to be impossible because of their own logic, because of the many false conclusions that their reading of their proof texts leads to. And then I gotta say, as a Orthodox Presbyterian, clearly their religion is but idolatry, inventing a God other than revealed in the Bible. And they're not honoring God by using the Bible. Their use of the Bible is actually breaking the third commandment, taking God's name in vain, by massively misinterpreting it. All this must be repented of, Romans 8:8, in which it says, I believe, quoting from memory, those who are in the flesh, i.e. unregenerate, cannot please God. And believe it or not, there are many stubborn Arians, Jehovah's Witnesses out there. When confronted with the scriptural truth at my door or elsewhere, they will not receive what the Orthodox have to say, because it's interesting to note why. The aorist, such as the Arian, interprets any verse whatsoever I bring up either literally or figuratively as he pleases. And that's just a blank check for him to make the Bible falsely teach his view and avoid the plain sense of very many scriptural texts that are against his view and show he's not adhering to the scriptures, he's teaching a system of doctrine that denies the scriptures. Well, that's all for now. Till next time.